George W. Bush was elected the 43rd President of the United States in 2000. In his first year in office, he had to lead the country through the September 11th terrorist attacks. The attacks and their aftermath, including the controversial Iraq War, largely defined Bush's presidency. George Walker Bush, the son of former U.S. President George H.W. Bush, spent his childhood in Texas before leaving to attend schools on the East Coast. He later returned to Texas to work in the oil and gas industry. In 1989, Bush and a former business partner organized a group of investors to purchase the Texas Rangers Major League Baseball team. Bush's position as managing partner of the team made him a prominent figure throughout Texas. In 1994, he ran for governor of Texas and won. He was re-elected in 1998. As governor, Bush won praise for his reforms to the state's school system, but was criticized for the state's frequent use of capital punishment. Bush's popularity as Texas governor propelled him to become the Republican nominee for the presidential election of 2000. He defeated Vice President Al Gore in one of the most controversial elections in American history. Bush became the first president in more than 100 years to be elected despite losing the popular vote. He won re-election in 2004 with a slim majority. Bush took office in January 2001. Before the year was over, he faced a crisis that would dominate his presidency.
Today we've had a national tragedy. 2 airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on our country.
On September 11, 2001, terrorists hijacked 4 U.S. airplanes, crashing 2 of them into the World Trade Center in New York City and a third into the Pentagon government building outside Washington, D.C. Both World Trade Center towers collapsed. The 4th plane crashed in a Pennsylvania field after passengers rebelled against the hijackers. In all, nearly 3,000 people died in the attacks. In the following days, Bush vowed to hunt down and punish those responsible.
I can hear you, the rest of the world hears you, and the people who knocked these buildings down will hear all of us soon.
Bush declared a war on terror and worked to create a global coalition or alliance to combat terrorism. In October 2001, he introduced the USA Patriot Act, which Congress quickly passed. The act gave the Federal Bureau of Investigation and other law enforcement agencies wide powers of search and surveillance in pursuing suspected terrorists. It drew widespread criticism from civil liberties advocates. The Bush administration accused Al-Qaeda, an Islamic extremist group led by Osama bin Laden, of carrying out the September 11th attacks. Bush launched a military campaign against Afghanistan, whose Taliban government had harbored bin Laden and his followers. The Taliban was forced from power, and thousands of Al-Qaeda militants or fighters were killed or captured. The remaining militants and their leaders were driven into hiding. As fighting continued in Afghanistan, Bush expanded the war on terror to include countries suspected of producing nuclear, chemical, or biological weapons, known as weapons of mass destruction. He then accused Saddam Hussein's government in Iraq of having an illegal weapons program. In March 2003, Bush warned Saddam to give up power or face removal by force. When Saddam refused to leave, Bush ordered an attack on Iraq. Within weeks, a coalition of mainly U.S. and British forces had overthrown Saddam's government. Guerrilla attacks continued, however, and coalition forces lost control of many parts of Iraq. Meanwhile, inspectors failed to find evidence of an illegal weapons program. The wars in Iraq and Afghanistan continued for the remainder of Bush's presidency. By the end of President Bush's second term, the country had fallen into a severe financial crisis. Public frustration over the economy and the wars in the Middle East helped the Democrat Barack Obama to win the presidency in 2008. After leaving office, Bush returned to private life in Texas. In 2010, he and former President Bill Clinton led fundraising efforts following a devastating earthquake in Haiti.